We're going to talk about bounties. The funniest thing about bounties, right? Specifically, I want to just talk about what the Yonko's bounty told us about power levels, or just what they told us in general, because I think it sent a clear message. But before we get to that, bounties are misleading, right? Because it says dead or alive. The bounty poster, you have the amount, dead or alive. That's not really the case. Okay, in chapter 107, we were told you'd rather carry someone in alive because if they're dead, you lose 30% of the bounty because the world government would rather have a public execution. Huh? When you see a bounty poster, like, what's your first thought? Is it, this is how strong somebody is? Because I don't know if that's exactly the case anymore. Is it just about the threat level to the government? Like, what's the purpose of a bounty poster nowadays? Or what's the purpose of a bounty poster in general? And of course, this is the conversation because of 957. We got the bounties of Roger, Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom Shanks. The top of the top in regards to bounties. What is it trying to tell us? Like, what's the exact purpose of it? I don't know, because bounties are all over the place, but I think bounties are one of the more interesting things in One Piece. Just imagine how hyped the community got last week because of a bounty reveal. No fights. Not saying that was the only reason the chapter was hyped, but we got a lot of stuff. We got the rocks and Garp, a bunch of different things. However, the bounties sent everyone over the top. Why? I think for bounties specifically, it's indicating a journey. For Luffy's bounty, in regards to the viewer, we were excited every time Luffy got a new bounty because it was a new milestone that Luffy was hitting every time, and that, as the viewer, you were following his journey, following his ascension. And so we were somewhat like the Straw Hats. While Nami would freak out every time the bounty went up, for us as the viewer, we were saying, okay, the Straw Hats, they're getting to another level now. From Luffy getting from 30 to 100 to 500. It's almost as if it's a proud moment. Like, every time you're going into the battles, you're like, okay, if Luffy does this, his bounty should be at this after the fact. And a few times we could be right about the bounty. More often than not, we're wrong because it's hard to calculate exactly how the Marines are going to factor in different things in different instances to calculate this bounty. Aokiji told us that your bounty doesn't only reflect your combat abilities, it reflects also your threat level to the world government. And that goes back to Nico Robin, who had an insane bounty as a child just because of her threat level to the world government. When they issue bounties, typically, again, it's going to reflect the threat level and combat abilities. It's like a combination of both. However, sometimes it's viewed as inconsistent. Sabos Bounty, 602 million berry. If Sabo is indeed the number 2 of the Revolutionary Army, next time you see Sabo, he has to be close to 2 billion. Based on him not only being a part of the Revolutionary Army, but the fact that he's now gained a Logia Devil Fruit and he's gotten stronger, him invading Marijoa, his threat level should have been raised, and that's assuming he's not dead or captured. But it's not an exact science. It's something that you try to calculate it, but it never really lands on what you expect. Sabo, when we first heard the bounty was coming out, it was a lot of speculation that Sabo was definitely going to be over 1 billion. And he was not. Oda does go out of the way to let you know that perception is also a reason for a bounty to be really high. Like for Kid, it's fact that he was also killing civilians. So for that, he got a higher bounty than Luffy. But again, perception with Chopper, in which Chopper is perceived as the pet, even though he had actual feats, he got a low bounty. Even for a Yonko commander like Ace at 550 million berry, when you think about what Ace presents to the story and what he represents as a symbol, 550 seems a bit low. However, with context, you understand it. In Fishman Island, Jinbei told us that after 300 million, it's hard for things to get higher. And that's when Luffy had gotten to 400 mil because of the time skip. So Ace, being at 550, say he got to 400 mil as well. He was offered the warlord position, turned that down, fought with Jinbei, defeated him. Well, people viewed it as a tie, but in the anime it offered context in which Jinbei fell first. Then Ace went on to fight Whitebeard. Then his affiliation with the Whitebeard crew being the second commander, 550 mil, it makes sense. However, knowing he's the son of Roger, his perceived potential was not factored in. And I think that's the problem with the bounty system. Potential is not factored in as much as where you currently are right now. Like for Luffy, when he was issued 30, they said that's where he is right now. Even though he was Garp's grandson, Dragon's son, not sure how well known that was in the world government, but knowing that he's Garp's grandson, Monkey D. Luffy, you have to put 2 and 2 together, and his perceived potential at that point, it should have been through the roof. So I think for the world government, sometimes they they lowball and they just give your bounty based on where you currently are instead of where you could possibly be. So for Ace, the 550, I think it was apt based on where he was. He was a fairly new pirate and he become a second commander of Whitebeard's crew, but the potential of it should have clearly been at least $1 billion. And the main reason why is that everybody knows that Ace is the one they were prepping to become the captain of the Whitebeard pirates, even though Ace didn't know it himself. That's something important you should probably use, right? For Luffy, he's currently at 1.5 billion berry. And I think that's apt because of the things Luffy has accomplished. And he's been lowballed, I think, throughout his entire pirate career, from breaking out of Impel Down and Islabi, challenging the world government. And again, his allies, Nico Robin, his father, his grandfather, his lineage should factor in as well. Even if you go to the warlords he's defeated and where he currently is now, looking at his allies, of course, they factored in Grand Fleet and different people he was affiliated with, and that jumped it to 1.5 billion. As you become more of a threat, they have to evaluate different things even more. So then we get to the Yonkos. When I saw the Yonkos bounties, first let's start with Gold Roger at 556. I guess when you first start the series and you think about bounties, it's like initially I'd said that Yonkos probably don't need bounties just because once you get to a certain level, the only other people that are capturing these Yonkos are the Yonko. So at that point, it's just like, if you bring them in, whatever you want, we will give it to you, but maybe not surpass this number. So I guess it makes sense for them to have a bounty, right? But 5 bill for Whitebeard and Roger seems apt. For Big Mom, Kaido, Shanks, they're not separated by much. However, it told me something. First off, Blackbeard's bounty. Being at 2 billion, jumping from 0 to 2 billion, it's a crazy jump, but think about everything he's accomplished. Going from basically a nobody on Whitebeard's crew to having Whitebeard's fruit and the Yami Yami no Mi, breaking into Impel Down, recruiting strong crewmates, defeating Marco and the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates pretty significantly. 2 billion is kind of low based on everything he's done, and again, his potential. For Shanks, Kaido, and Big Mom, their bounties told me in that short span of time, right? Shanks is 40, 39. Big Mom and Kaido, they should be around late 60s, early 70s, late 60s more than likely. They're a couple million, not a couple, but they're not that much higher than Shanks. So the Yonkos for the world government, they have them in a certain area, but think about where they have Whitebeard and Roger, like 1 billion higher. Whitebeard had the ability to destroy the world. Roger was the Pirate King, so his immense influence was important. So if you take down a Pirate King, that could curb just the start of a lot of pirates. For these pirates, Shanks, Big Mom, and Kaido, I don't think they don't have a magnum opus. Like, they don't have something you can hang your hat on saying, this is something that we have to stop right now. Of course, for Big Mom, she felt like if she had the Elbaf army, at that point, she probably would ascend to the Whitebeard Roger level, right? To 5 billion. For Kaido, I think his recklessness holds him back. I think for them, knowing how reckless Kaido is, they don't think he can come up with a plan or come up with a way to logically overthrow the world government. Like, they know Kaido's niche. Essentially what the bounty told me. Combat abilities aside, these three are relatively on the same level, strength-wise. Big Mom and Kaido, they get a slight bump because they've been Yonkos for so much longer than Shanks. But I think we got to give it up to Shanks for being in the same range while being a Yonko for 4 or 6 years. For 6 years. He's been a Yonko, and he's pretty much on par with Big Mom and Kaido. Some things you have to factor in. Big Mom and Kaido, again, longevity. For Shanks being fairly new and being somewhat a keeper of peace, that's pretty significant. I know people were saying use the power level as a way to discern who's stronger between Kaido, Big Mom, and Shanks, but I think that's flawed because, again, longevity for those two, and Shanks being really young, the youngest of the Yonko, even including Blackbeard. I'm not going to say the bounties tell us that Shanks is the strongest Yonko, but I think based on what the bounties are telling us, Shanks would probably be the hardest Yonko to topple. Strength-wise, Shanks, Big Mom, and Kaido should be relatively on par. You could say one is stronger than the other. Semantics, they're relatively on par. One thing that's clear, Shanks has the strongest commanders out of all of them. Blackbeard is a toss-up because we have no idea how strong Katarina, Shiryu, those guys are. It's a toss-up. And Blackbeard himself as a force is a toss-up because he has Whitebeard's fruit. And I think that's the main thing that kind of sets him apart from the other Yonko, having that insane devil fruit, and along with the Yami Yami too. Shanks' commanders were pointed out and said that they were formidable. Like, they're known big shots. His commanders, Yasop, Lucky Roo, Ben Beckman. Those guys are big shots in their own right. the only commanders that were shouted out, saying that they're a well-balanced and impregnable crew. I think Shanks's crew currently is the closest crew to the previous generation of Gold Roger. For most of us, looking at Shanks and looking at the story, we wonder, like, what is holding Shanks back? We don't know his motive yet. It seems like he's the keeper of peace again, but the bounties told me that Shanks is still the Yonko that if I had to bet money on, if you had to bet money on a Yonko crew v crew you had to topple, he would be the most difficult Yonko to take down based on not only his strength, and granted, Shanks was doing this with one arm. Dueling with Mihawk in the past, being a formidable swordsman, right? That's something that's clear. He's an amazing swordsman that Mihawk viewed him as a rival. After that, he then goes on to become a Yonko. What happened? What event was it that they said, now he's a Yonko? Who did he take down? Did we have 3 Yonko for a long time? Was it Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido for a long time? Was somebody else in that spot? With the reveal of Rocks, I'm not going to rule it out that it could be someone that the world government is keeping quiet, or somebody that's lurking, because people are saying that Rocks could be the lurking legend, but they said Rocks passed away. So is the lurking legend still out there? If there is a lurking legend, it would be perfect if he was the previous Yonko before Shanks. Maybe Shanks took him down, or he stepped back because something happened to a crew member. It's still a lot of details to iron out, but I think bounties in general, or what the bounties of the Yonko told me, is that even though it said 1v1 bet on Kaido, which is, I think is still clear, that's who you bet on. It's not guaranteed, but that's who you bet on. Crew v crew, I'm betting on Shanks because of who he has around him, and again, his overall strength. So yeah, I mean, this discussion was kind of everywhere, talking about bounties, the meaning of bounties, Yonko bounties, Shanks being the strongest Yonko, right? But the point of it was just, I was just trying to tell you guys exactly how I felt after I saw those bounties. As amazing as Whitebeards and Rogers were, we know what set them apart, right? But then people ask the question, if you feel like Whitebeard's Devil Fruit set him apart. And I think Whitebeard also gets a bump because he was going toe-to-toe with Roger. And again, it looks a bit weird as well after knowing what we know in chapter 957, saying that Rocks got taken down by Garp and Roger. So how is Whitebeard still heralded as this monster? I think it's more context that we're missing, that we have to get. I don't know, man. I got Shanks. But based on crew v crew, like if you had to bet on crews, who would you choose? Like what Yonko are you rooting for, thinking if they had to battle, who are they taking out? Like who's winning versus the Yonko? Of course, we haven't seen Shanks's entire fleet yet. We've just seen like his main crew and a few other stragglers. But who are you betting on? For me, Shanks. I know it's like a whole roundabout method way of telling you that Shanks is still freaking awesome, but I'm sorry, Shanks is awesome, even with one arm. Sometimes I feel like I've been put on this earth to kind of sing Shanks's praises, so don't mind me, just fulfilling my duty. So leave your thoughts below. What do you think about bounties in general? Like, what do bounties tell you about a character? Like when we saw Katakuri had over, 1,050,000,000 or whatever, and now looking at the big picture of bounties, how do you view Katakuri's bounty now? I think that's a beauty of it as well. Like looking in hindsight, after knowing Roger had over 5 billion, and Whitebeard, looking at Katakuri and Jack and those guys over 1 billion, it's like they're good, they're fine, but they're not they're not touching those monsters, right? I can't wait to see Marco's bounty as well, some of the Whitebeard pirates, and see how they view them, because back then, while Whitebeard was competing against Roger, Roger had full-grown men in Riley, Scopper, Bullet, if you want to include him. Whitebeard had kids, essentially, in Odin, Marco, Jozu, because they were in their 20s. But yeah, leave your thoughts below, guys. What do you think about it? Like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Shout out to my patrons. I just put a post up for my patrons. I thank you guys so much. A lot more stuff coming from my patrons. If you want to be a part of that, you can click the link below and become a patron, because then you can support me even more, and then we can make more content. A lot of great things to come. I hope you guys have been enjoying this influx of content on the channel. Demon Slayer stuff, Hunter stuff, but I'm not gonna say anymore. You will see. Like, subscribe, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.